There you go. Buy my merch at oncebittenpodcast.com/merch.
All right, we are recording. Adam, how you doing, mate? How you doing? Nice to
Yeah,
see you.
man. Great to see you. Thanks so much.
And we were just talking about how the community's growing and everything's moving at such a fast speed, and how we're trying to keep up with everything and everyone, and organize our time and everyone's spinning so many plates, it seems, at the moment in the Bitcoin
Yeah.
space. Those that are building, at
You know,
least.
it's such an interesting, so I've been doing this since 2013. I've been in the Bitcoin space. And in 2013, it felt small but big. And then here we are at the tail end of 2023, and still it feels small but big. I think it's a testament to just how early we are in this journey. I wrote a blog a little while ago, and my closing sentiment was that a Bitcoin journey is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think, like, the last 10 years have taught me anything, it's that to a T.
Yeah. Well, that I mean, we have to start there. 2013. Uh, why? How? Why Bitcoin in 2013? What happened? What was going on in your life?
Man, it's funny. I was just a 20-year-old kid, kind of heard about Bitcoin. It hit $100 for the first time. And it's always price that brings you in, right? As much as anyone wants to tell you, it's maybe today, I suppose, with all the good content, content like this about how Bitcoin's a freedom tool and how Bitcoin is truly a vote for freedom. Maybe now we've got some actual altruistic Bitcoiners, but back then it was always price, that kind of price, or like nerdy dev talk that brought people in. And for me, it was price. I'm a pleb through and through, no technical skills, nothing at all. But loved commerce, loved figuring things out, hated authority, and Bitcoin kind of just hit those numbers for me. So found Bitcoin, thought it was fake, thought it was a joke. Then had to dive into what Bitcoin was. And I mean, as you know, like, you learn about Bitcoin, you don't just learn about, Bitcoin, you learn about the history of money, you learn about economics, you learn about encryption, you learn about privacy, you learn about all these important things that, and then eventually you realize that Bitcoin is not really a thing. Bitcoin is but a representation of us, of human beings. And so kind of went on that journey, and fell in love with the art, I guess, of making Bitcoin more accessible, a little bit easier to use. And today, the organization, called Bitcoin Well, we help make it easy to buy, sell, and use Bitcoin. We're like, the mission is just to onboard the next generation. We want to make sure that we've got people coming into the space, people excited about the space, with the end goal of enabling independence. We want people to be independent with their money.
Now, you're 20. The price hits $100. You probably want to go out and buy some. That's kind of the worst time in your life, right? When you're 20, you're broke. You've seen something that and I feel really bad now for, like, the Zoomers, the 18 to 19-year-olds that are like, well, and as well, if you compare it to now to back to 10 years ago, you're trying to find those resources to learn about it.
Totally.
Very little
It's like
stuff is out
IRC
there.
chats and Reddit at the time, right? Like,
Right.
there was no YouTube podcast
Right.
to
You're eight,
benefit
let's
from.
say you're 18, 19 now, and you've got like this nagging doubt in the back of your head that what is money? What is this all about? And then you can just
Right.
go onto YouTube and you can get a Sailor masterclass from Sailor, from, not just Breedlove, but he's been across all of the podcasts. Or maybe you find Andreas, some of his old stuff, or maybe you find Safe's books, or maybe you find Stefan's podcast. There's so much, and you could be orange pilled very, very quickly. I mean, people are flying down the Bitcoin rabbit hole these days like greased monkeys.
Yeah.
Straight down to the bottom. It's like, yeah, I'm all in.
Yeah.
But if you're
And
all
they
in
and
and
they
you've got,
skip the pipe too, right?
yeah,
There's no altcoin casino. There's
yeah,
no like FOMO in with leverage. It's like hardened Bitcoiner. Snap. I'm good.
yeah, exactly, which is great to see. But
For sure.
awful if you're 18, 19 and you got like $500, or like, like
Yeah. Well, it's such an interesting perspective, I feel like, because yes, and at the time, I mean, hey, at the time I thought I was late, right?
Yeah.
I was buying coins, by the single coins, and I was learning from and chatting to people that were buying in the hundreds of coins. That was their batch of coins. And today people are buying by the thousands of satoshis. And I feel like, the reason we buy Bitcoin is not to get rich, it's to stay wealthy. And that mindset shift is so clutch. That's what helps us, I think, avoid, the crypto casino. And that's what helps us keep our time preference low, is if we realize that we're not really trying to make money, we're trying to save the value we've created with our time. And I mean, hey, I've been doing this 10 years. I've been on this journey for 10 years, and I'm still learning that fact. But something tells me, the 18-year-old, and I know this from experience, that buys, tens or hundreds of Bitcoin when they're $100, also sells them when they're 1,000, and
Yeah.
sells them when they're 20,000, and only to realize, oh, I actually didn't need that car. Or like, are those sneakers, and this is my experience, are those sneakers really that important now? When I'm holding my brand new daughter, and I'm like, you deserve the world. I don't need to have, a closet full of sneakers and a garage full of cars. I need to have as many Bitcoin in my cold storage so that you get these when you're old and mature and responsible to inherit such power and such responsibility. And so
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when you're 18 now, yes, maybe that's a detractor, but it will only harden them like when they're 35, when they've got 2 decades experience learning about money, learning about Bitcoin, stacking sats. They're going to feel really, really good about themselves. And hopefully they won't have gone through the mistakes of liquidating dozens of coins for useless fiat garbage.
Yeah, for sure. So you're not jumping on the bandwagon of this forming narrative of dying with your Bitcoin?
I don't know, man. Like for me, my Bitcoin is fully for next generations. I hope that I do a good enough job here. I've got a century on Earth. Let's say I'm 30 now, so maybe I've got like, I actually believe I'll probably live to be like 120 or 130. So let's say I have a century left. I've got a century's worth of value to create, and I hope I do a good enough job that like my fifth, sixth, and seventh generation down the line are able to be crushing it still. And hopefully I do a good enough job instilling the good values into my next generation that my grandkids and my great grandkids and my great great grandkids and down the line, they also don't just go, back into low or high time preference fiat mindset, which is a danger, right? And I think too, it's like, no, I don't want to die with my Bitcoin. I don't save. If I wanted to die with my Bitcoin, I would like, I'd spend it on things that I, have high time preference mindset on.
Yeah.
But I want to pass it down to the next gen.
Yeah, me too, man. I'm not on that train of dying with Bitcoin. I'm on the train of creating generational wealth and putting the education in place that those that are coming,
Yeah.
because that's what's sorely missing. What's sorely
Yeah.
missing is the education. I mean, yeah, trust fund kids and whatever else. Yeah, but they weren't educated. Like,
No,
people say, yeah, they went to all these highly private schools. Yeah, they were educated, but not by the
in the
family.
system.
The system educated them. Oh yeah, but
Yeah.
private school, it's like, yeah, whatever. It's just a fluffed up, it's the same curriculum, same agenda.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm going through this right now. Like my oldest son is just turned 7. My youngest son is just about 2. And we've got 4 kids. And so we're right in the heart of this school kind of dilemma. And it's like, you've got 3 options really. You go to like public school, private school, or you privately educate. And I feel like the privately educated route is just more and more and more attractive. Like you think about our school system, and maybe this is off topic. Feel free to bring me back to earth
no, man,
if we've derailed here already. We're like, what are we, 10
listeners to
minutes
this
in?
show know I love ripping on this stuff.
But I feel like, when I think about what I want my kids to be learning, it's like not history with 35 other children in a classroom. It's like, how do you defend yourself? Learning about God and learning about Jesus, learning about kindness, learning how to interact with the world, how to cook, how do you fix things around the house. Like these are the activities and music and stimulating things. How do you interact with the world is so important. And school is like such a little box that we silo the kids into. It's like 8 hours a day for these young kids. They aren't going to jujitsu at 6 p.m. at night, or if they are, they're exhausted. They're not going to music class with like ready to learn and really engage in what it means to be a musician, because they can't. They're just brain dead from school. And so I don't know. I've been thinking so much about this. It's so deeply on my heart. And I just feel like it's got to change.
I got a whole podcast thread I'll share with you because I've interviewed so many people in, thought leaders in this space, including Peter Gray, Sir Ken Robinson. Pat Ferenga just came on recently, and he's carried on John Holt's work from the 80s after John passed away from cancer in the late 80s, and has re-released all of his books. I'll be releasing an episode today with Anna Fabrega, who's now at Synthesis School. Yeah, so man, you're on the right path. You know it because your gut is telling you. And you are a parent, and you should listen to your gut if you're a parent rather than listen to the state or the social construct around you that has all been through the same linear educational bullshit. But, oh, it's all right. Well, look at me. I turned out okay. Can't be that bad. It's like,
it's not... like, and that's such a backwards mentality. I was thinking about this in an unrelated topic the other day. It's like, I turned out okay. Mm-hmm. Sure. And that's because you're exceptional and good for you. But where's the delta between your potential? Like, and what if, right? What if you, like, my greatest fear is that my kids turn out okay. And like I've got parent goggles on without question, but my kids are like, they're bright. I just got to spend a weekend with my son, just him and I went to a football game. We enjoyed just some father-son time. And I'm talking to this kid. I'm like, damn, you're smart. Like, you get it. And it's such a proud father moment. And it's like, I don't want him to be okay. I want him to like surpass whatever potential even I, with my parent goggles on, think he could be. And then same goes for my daughters and my son. Like, I don't know, man. It's just such an interesting world that we grew up in. It's like, we're just hell-bent on doing the bare minimum rather than achieving the absolute maximum. And that delta, I think, is because we're not in a society and a system that implores, thought leaders and that encourages people to be outspoken and change the way things are done.
No, man, that's the way the system was designed, to crush all of it.
Right.
And it's anyway, it's a rabbit hole I'll lead you down, and happy to answer
I'd love that
questions. So let's steer back towards Bitcoin. So what have you been doing the last 10 years in the space? Have you worked at several different companies? What's been going on?
Yeah, one org the whole way. So I fell in, like I said, no coding experience. At the time, had a really hard time buying Bitcoin, as you can imagine, from a little town in Alberta, up in Canada. And so kind of like had two options back in 2013. It was like meet a guy in a back alley or wire money to Russia were like the two prominent ways to buy Bitcoin back then. So I opted for the back alley experience, had what you'd expect, buying like internet money in a back alley, I guess, in 2013. And then my background, I guess, like leaving high school, I was a bartender and then managed a restaurant. And so kind of thought like, hey, this customer experience could probably be improved a little bit. Why don't I just sell Bitcoin? I had met people at like Starbucks and McDonald's. We had ice cream and coffee and just talking about Bitcoin. And that was super cool. And then, my phone went from ringing like once a month to like once a week to daily to multiple times a day. And I was like, wow, this is sweet. I just get to drive around and talk about Bitcoin, make a little bit of money. This is fantastic. And then in October of that year, Mitch Demeter, who's on our board right now, he launched the world's first Bitcoin ATM in Vancouver. And I was like, oh, way more scalable than me driving around to Starbucks and McDonald's to sell Bitcoin.
So one thing that's crossing my mind right there is, if you're selling the Bitcoin, where are you getting it from? Like, what was your liquidity pool?
Good question. So at first I was driving like 3 hours south of where I lived to meet Dave, who I think was on the podcast earlier,
Dave Bradley, yeah.
and buying them from his store in Calgary. And then I drive back up to Edmonton and sell. And then eventually I linked up with, like, there was 3 prominent Bitcoin exchanges in Canada. I ended up just, linking up with them and buying Bitcoin that way. But yeah, at first it was driving down to Calgary from Edmonton, which, like I said, about 300 kilometers. What's that, like 180 miles?
Was he doing that with Francis at the time, or
no, that was with a different guy. Francis and Dave linked up in 2017, I want to say.
Wow,
2016,
okay.
2017.
Right, okay. So you drive
a little bit later,
like 3-hour trip one way.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6-hour round trip.
Always in the same day. Never stayed. I couldn't afford to stay overnight. It was like I got in my little 2000 Volkswagen Golf that started, like, about 80% of the time, ripped down the major artery here in Alberta, and then bought my Bitcoin, grabbed like a burger, and then zipped back to Edmonton to make it happen.
So you were putting a little premium on, like, the selling price. How were you working it? Because you got to cover your costs.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, there was, like, not a great business model there. I was just so stoked on Bitcoin that I was happy to be selling it. I was taking a lot of price exposure, and that just worked out for me. So that was kind of the model at the time, was I'll just buy Bitcoin, sell it, and then if the price goes up, great. If the price goes down, I'll just buy more Bitcoin. And that was the model, until, of course, like, once the Bitcoin ATM came in. That was February 2014 when we finally deployed. We deployed actually Alberta's first Bitcoin ATM. Then we linked into, like, an API and got things actually properly sorted, where I wasn't taking price exposure anymore. But that was the first. That was the early days, man. Was just orange pilling in Starbucks and taking crazy price exposure.
Love it. So you hook up. I forgot who you mentioned with the Bitcoin ATM.
Yeah. So we didn't do it with Mitch.
Right.
We just did it ourselves. So I guess I was a one-man show. We called it Bitcoin Solutions. That was the most creative name I could come up with. I'll actually never forget. I was sitting in a hotel room in New York with my then fiance, now my wife. We were taking our engagement photos, and I was in the hotel room, like, designing the website. I was just so amped up on what, I thought Bitcoin Solutions could be. It's like 8 p.m. We've got 2 nights in New York. We're taking our engagement photos. Like, it's all, very nice. Like, this beautiful trip planned. And I'm like, hey, let's just get a pizza and we can just, sit in the hotel room, and I'll just get this, website up. My fiance, bless her heart, is like, she's all there for it. She just had it from day one. So that was super awesome. And then first ATM goes into here in Alberta. And then I go to some conference, believe it or not, a Bitcoin conference in Toronto in 2014. I think one of the first. Like, it was tiny. I met like Jeffrey Tucker was there. Charlie Lee was there before, like, and this is before, like, altcoins were scams. This is like, no, this is an ecosystem. And the time was so different back then. It was like a very small gathering, and I ended up sitting at the same table with the guys from BitAccess, which is one of the larger. I think they just sold their Bitcoin ATM company now. And I was like, they're like, hey, you're the guy that launched the Alberta ATM, and I was like, oh yeah, what's up? They're like, we're making ATMs, and I was like, oh sweet, I'd love to get one, but I can't afford it. Like, I have all my money is sitting now at this ATM. They're like, well, we'll give you one, and you just pay us back with profits. And I was like, oh, fantastic. So got another ATM, deployed it in Saskatchewan, and then just kind of started building up the network from there. And eventually, before you knew it, like, today we've got just about 200 machines across Canada. And about a year ago, like, this is kind of where this is when I started, like, becoming a Bitcoiner. I think it probably took me 8 years to actually become a Bitcoiner, not a guy that ran a Bitcoin business. And really figured out that self-custody was, like, after watching so many Bitcoin exchanges collapse, realized that Bitcoin exchanges are terrible. And there's no good way to buy Bitcoin safely. And so we started in Canada, launched a non-custodial Bitcoin exchange, direct from banks. So there's no account funding. There's no like withdraw process. You just send money, receive Bitcoin. We actually built it so you don't even have to log into the platform. It just all happens automatically. In Canada, we have this payment rail called e-transfer, and you can send money like peer-to-peer through a centralized service, which is like a banking conglomerate. And so the transaction is actually initiated from your bank. You send Bitcoin to like our designated e-transfer address, or sorry, you send CAD, Canadian dollars, to the designated e-transfer address. Our system picks that up and then sends Bitcoin directly to the wallet address on file. There's no like, no need to find an account and then look at an order book and then place an order. And then the Bitcoin goes into your custodian and then make a withdrawal. It's just like boom, boom, snap, snap, instant. And that's been exciting. That's been really, really cool. It's been slow growth here in Canada, which has been good, I think, working out the kinks. And then in the summer, launch that in the States. Not with e-transfer, obviously, but through the ACH protocol. And again, working out the kinks. But it's been a journey, man. I think that self-custody Bitcoin is just like the number one most important thing you can do. You have to buy Bitcoin. You can't like buy Bitcoin and then leave it on exchange. I see people telling like, oh, well, these other platforms, they enable withdrawals. It's like, well, yeah, that's like the bare minimum. That's like me as a dad being like, well, I changed my kid's diaper. It's like, well, okay, great. Like that just comes with the territory, enabling withdrawals. Like, why are we enabling complacency? How are we charged with educating the public about Bitcoin, teaching them best practice, and then giving them the option to do the absolute worst possible thing in the industry? Like the broker or the seller of the Bitcoin should at no point in time have unfettered access to the Bitcoin ever, period. It's just too dangerous. There's too many misaligned incentives, too many opportunities for error. It just doesn't work. And so that's been the mission. The mission kind of revamped into enabling independence and doing that through ways that truly allow people to buy and control their Bitcoin.
Awesome. So I want to go back to the early days again and get, because Bitcoin ATM machines, not a thing I've seen many of at all in Europe. So
it's crazy thing about that. So like you, obviously I don't think you're in the UK anymore, but like we actually purchased a Bitcoin ATM company in the UK in 2021. We had like 10 or 15% of the market share through this acquisition. And the FCA, which is like the UK regulating money bosses, they completely shut it down. They 3 months after we made the acquisition, they changed the rules such that you could only buy like $400 a year or 450 pounds a year at Bitcoin ATMs, and that was it. And the entire business just disappeared, and then effectively making it illegal to own and operate Bitcoin ATMs. And so they all just disappeared. There's no legal way to buy Bitcoin with cash through a company other than like obviously peer-to-peer is, hopefully still fine. But it's pretty shocking, man. And I think that's the most of Europe has done that. North America has definitely shot off for Bitcoin ATMs, but like you said, in the UK and even broader Europe, I'm not too familiar with the EU, but certainly in the UK, it's been tragic watching like this opportunity to buy Bitcoin privately through a company kind of just disappear.
It's really shocking considering as well now they went through Brexit and they don't have to listen to the EU and they can make their own rules. They're making all the wrong rules. Like that, if they'd have opened up the market to it, they could have attracted so much business. But of course, well,
is that not Cobra effect to a T, man? Like, is that not just
you got the Bank of England right there?
Yeah.
Come on, they're not going to let that go down on their patch.
No, it's so sad, and I think too, like, I mean, what a testament to the power of Bitcoin, and people think they're going to regulate Bitcoin. I don't think that will be the case. I mean, I think we all know Bitcoin is not capable of being regulated. It's a protocol. It's just a being. It's like regulating oxygen. How are you going to regulate oxygen? What you can do is regulate how people obtain the Bitcoin. And I think that's where the war on cash, that's where, we're seeing in the States right now, like it's tough, man. It's tough operating a Bitcoin platform in the US where the rules are pretty uncertain. We've got these uneducated regulators trying to figure out what the heck to do with this influential asset. And they're not really going after Bitcoin proper. They're going after onboarding ramps to Bitcoin proper. And it's the next 10 years are going to be, I think, pretty crucial to the history of sovereign money.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a burgeoning peer-to-peer scene because
Yeah.
it's just because the social layer of Bitcoin is getting built out so much quicker than it ever has been before. And, I'm going to shill Orange Pill app here and now because they're doing a great job. Yes, I sit on the advisory board, but I've seen the power of it. You can now list your events and people can find each other or they can find events. And if you can get along to an event, you're sure as hell going to find somebody that you can transact with, and whether that's £50 or £5,000. This will just explode. And well, why not? It's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system after all. And there's even companies like Ray. He's building out CivKit, where he's this is going to be a peer-to-peer thing for people to create apps and whatever else. So we have Beask, we have Huddle Huddle, we have Peach. There's going to be more. There's going to be a ton more. But I'm trying to just think back to 2014. You put the ATM machine there. How did that work? Like, somebody would have to come in, put in your Canadian dollars, and then you scanned a barcode, or you got a receipt, you got a ticket. Like, what was the way it worked, and how has it changed over time?
Yeah, actually, the process hasn't really changed too much over time at all. You walk into the machine, scan your Bitcoin address. You need to have a wallet before you show up, and then you insert your cash. The Bitcoin machine has a hot wallet designated to it, and so once the address is scanned, the ATM knows where to send the coins, and then money goes in. The ATM does the conversion, and Bitcoin leaves the hot wallet. So it's quite simple process. Process hasn't changed too much in 10 years. It's such a simple system.
So you just create like an invoice on your phone, or you like $500 scan, and then it asks
not
you,
even like, it's not
really?
Lightning. It's fully on chain. So you just scan your your public address at the machine. You put $500 into the machine, for example, and then the machine knows how much Bitcoin to send to that address. So the machine talks to the hot wallet makes a TXID, signs it, and then Bitcoin shows up on the wallet that you scanned. And that's kind of too how we modeled the online, like the Bitcoin portal that we're making right now is same thing. Like, enter your address first. I think that's the biggest key and the biggest miss amongst other Bitcoin platforms is the Bitcoin address piece happens after the transaction. And we flipped that. We wanted the Bitcoin transaction or the Bitcoin address to come first. So we always know where to send the Bitcoin. We at no point in time want to hold Bitcoin. It has to go to the customer's address always and by default.
And where are you pulling it from? Where's your liquidity plugged into?
So we plug into like the major exchanges now. There's like 6 or 7 different like, what would you call them? Commercial or B2B liquidity pools. They like, supposedly they've all got APIs into, 20 other international ones, and they're all kind of, it's like a big market making web at this point. And so we pull liquidity from there. We still, though, have a hot wallet with a balance. Coins leave the hot wallet and then are instantly replenished from our liquidity partners.
All right, now we got to do the privacy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do the machines have cameras on them?
Good question. There is, of course, a camera to scan the QR code and the Bitcoin QR code. Some of the kiosks do have cameras. We don't enable them. We actually don't need to. It's so Canadian law, and the only place that we operate Bitcoin ATMs is in Canada right now. Canadian law states that we need to verify the identity of customers for transactions over $1,000.
Hmm.
And so when the time comes to verify the identity of our customers, it's actually a better experience on their mobile phones. So we just text them a link. They go to our verification site. They do the whole like ID and selfie and blah, blah, blah. So we actually don't enable that like top lens camera that you see most kiosks having. You also don't necessarily need to verify your identity just to use the machine. And the only reason you need to verify your identity to use the online portal is to buy Bitcoin and prevent fraud. So you can still sell Bitcoin. We also have the ability, you can pay your household bills in Canada, like your hydro bill, your telecom bill, your credit cards, taxes, whatever you want to do. You don't have to verify your identity for transactions under $1,000 there either. And the only reason you have to when you're buying is just because of fraud. It's a common misconception that you need to verify your identity due to compliance in Canada to buy Bitcoin. But the fraud within the banking system is so rampant and so easy in this legacy fiat ecosystem that we need to know who's sending us money and make sure that that money actually comes back. Because we've had like throughout the years, this organization has had hundreds of thousands of dollars just clawed back from the bank. It's actually quite shocking. You talk about finality of Bitcoin and people are like, oh, Bitcoin transactions, 10 minutes to finalize, oh, the fees are crazy. It took 20 minutes for this confirmation to come through. It's like the legacy fiat system has like 90 days. The bank can go into your bank 90 days after you received a payment and just take that money back, which is like, I don't know, man, catastrophic. It doesn't lead to good commerce. It leads to an untrusting kind of ecosystem of payments, and it's no good. And so that's why we have to verify identity online, which, like, admittedly, is not my favorite thing. But until we can figure out the fraud, and that's where the major innovation will come. But until we can figure out the fraud, it's it's going to be tough.
How do you also like manage high fee environments? If somebody stood there and they're wanting to buy $50 worth of Bitcoin, and the high fee environment is going to take $5-10 or something like that, is there like a warning? Because I think there's a missing
Yeah.
piece of education right here, especially what we've seen in the last week. What somebody sent like
Yeah.
83 Bitcoin fee or something like ridiculous. Hopefully that gets returned like the previous one. But yeah, how does that work?
Yeah. So, I mean, just like everyone, we have to adapt and adopt different Bitcoin practices. And so we've enabled a batching system where by default we cover the mining fee for our customers. And we send those out on a timed basis. So if you aren't in a rush, like if you're stacking sats on a recurring basis, it doesn't really matter if your transaction comes at like 10 a.m. or 1 p.m., for example. And so if you want to stack as much as possible, you're going to opt for a batch. You're going to let us pay the fee, and we'll send, the litany of transactions all as one TXID in one batch. If you are in a rush for the transaction, then we just enable you to pay a minor fee, and like you set the fee at what you want it to be. We kind of have some recommendations there, like a low, medium, high priority type of UX, and then that just comes off the Bitcoin that we'd send. So if you were buying Bitcoin, say you were set to receive 0.011 BTC, and you wanted to pay a mining fee of like whatever, let's call it 50,000 sats or whatever like that, then you'd receive, well, now my math's gonna be all messed up, but you'd receive like 0.009995 Bitcoin, rather than the 0.01 that you were originally trying to buy. And so that batch has been working pretty good. I feel like we can do that on our side, and it's pretty easy for us to like educate and talk to the customer about what's happening there. Where the key is going to be in the education is TXID management after they receive the Bitcoin. If someone's stacking sats, like I personally, every single Friday, a bill payment automatically leaves my bank. And then, the next business day, Bitcoin automatically comes into my cold storage. This is how I've set it up. We do a recurring buy system this way. And what happens is I have incredibly high and bloated TXIDs. My wallet is super bloated. And so we need to like educate our customers on TXID management and be like, hey, this is how you do it. This is how you consolidate your UTXOs. This is when to do it. You know, it's not when the mempool is like 30 blocks deep. It's like, and so that secondary education, which is part of what comes with self-custody, part of what comes with being a sovereign individual and truly owning and controlling your money. And I feel like those barriers and what I talked about earlier about the complacency of these platforms, like nobody using a custodial platform has any idea about UTXO management, has any idea about high fee environments, because their custodians like shield them from that. And it's a little bit like the nanny. Like it's like nanny state mindset of like, oh, no. We're gonna help our customers, you know, by doing this for them. It's like, well, sure, but you're also exposing them to the greatest threat of all time, which is somebody else holding and controlling their value. And that's dangerous. So the yin and yang, the push and pull of fully enabling our customer to be independent while educating them on like the burdens of that independence.
And obviously there's a lot of, so if somebody's going to the machine and they've got their phone, they're generating the wallet from the phone. So they're using some kind of hot wallet, or I guess they could get a cold storage device. They could print off a couple of, or even snap a few of unused addresses and bring that. So there's one thing. But do you advise on best practice if you're using a hot wallet? You know, what best mobile wallet to use?
Yes and no. It's funny, you know, like the customer online and the customer at the ATM are pretty different. I feel like the ATM is pretty utility focused, so they are mostly using a hot wallet. Whereas our online customer is mostly sending directly to cold storage. And so at the ATM, like we recommend Blue Wallet. They've been pretty good so far. You know, no big collapses or catastrophes. But we had our own mobile wallet for a little bit. We acquired it as part of a gift card acquisition from Rise Wallet. We rebranded it into a wallet called Well Wallet, and that's what we onboarded people onto. But what I realized was happening was people were confusing their Well Wallet, which was like fully non-custodial. Like you got to have it, like you back up your seed. You know, the wallet would generate a seed using the Bitcoin JS. The wallet would give you the seed. You have to back it up. Like it was not a custodial platform at all. But people were confusing it for a Bitcoin Well account, and it got very messy. People weren't paying close enough attention to the seed phrase. We weren't paying close enough attention to the development and the maintenance of the technology that is Well Wallet, or that was Well Wallet. And so we actually deprecated it with the thought process that like you should just bring your own wallet, whether it be cold storage or a hot wallet. You know, we'll have some recommendations for you, but please, like when you make an account at bitcoinwell.com, like bring your own wallet, do the work, set up a wallet, back up your seed phrase, you know, get a cold card, get a foundation or a passport, and just do the work and set it up. And I think that was the right decision. I think that eventually we will, when we've got the resources, especially to properly build out the education and the wallet that, you know, we intended Well Wallet to be, we will. But it won't be branded the same. It's going to be completely separate, primarily and probably solely open source, just to really, really, you know, push through the adoption of self-custody, try to make it as easy as possible. Because our job, like Bitcoin Well, our mission to enable independence is one thing. When you think about what we do, we help people interact with the Bitcoin protocol. Kind of like Gmail doesn't really do anything other than make the SMTP protocol usable. Like even for me, like I've been running a Bitcoin company for 10 years. I'm like, started off as a pleb. I kind of like, I've earned my stripes now. I probably, right? Like I've got a little bit of like technical cojones now. But I like it's very, very difficult to interact with the raw SMTP protocol, like in command line. Like that would suck versus like compose, recipient, type, send. Like that is much nicer. And Gmail, unfortunately, does that in a custodial environment where they hold and control the data that's sent. We're looking to make that same interaction engine. We're looking to help you interact with the Bitcoin protocol, but in a non-custodial environment where we're just a pass through. We take this complicated, Bitcoin protocol and give it some nice user experience, some pretty colors and nice shapes, and help people, buy Bitcoin in the fastest and safest way possible.
It'd be interesting, like the metrics you see. You're gonna get a nice kind of flag of the next bull run, I suppose, because all of a sudden you're going to see more users coming to the machine, and what's great is they can only self custody. So we're going to have the next wave of people getting their Bitcoin straight into self custody rather than going through this, which we've all been through. Those listening here, we've all had to use. We're not had to, but in the past,
it was the easiest, the path of least resistance.
If you've been, yeah, of course, but if you've been stacking as well, like head down, full on stacking, decent size, there was only one game in town. You weren't meeting a guy in the back alley for $10,000 worth of Bitcoin out of your, your salary or your bonus, whatever it was. Or if you've got an inheritance come in and you want to buy 20, 30 grand's worth, or you're switching a pension. Like there was one game in town, and that was a centralized exchange. So they've played their role. 100% they have. Like Sailor wouldn't have $4 billion worth of Bitcoin if there were not centralized exchanges, right? Or other custodial options as well. But as we go into this next wave, it's going to be very interesting to see that, like, the numbers and the metrics that you guys see at the machines, right? And you're going to get a pretty good idea of when retail is coming.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be the machines telling us that. It's going to be the Bitcoin portal. It's going to be our online, like this. Like, so we are a centralized exchange, obviously. We're a centralized platform online, but we're non-custodial. And I think that our ability to, like, the metrics are very, very telling. And you can see it with like new account signups, like you said, but also transaction size is pretty interesting. The metrics between buy and sell, like the difference therein. But I think what the best metrics. So we had a storefront here in Edmonton, and we had a team of people whose full-time jobs were just to help people, or just to onboard them into Bitcoin, get them free education, wallet setups, et cetera, et cetera. And one of our leader of that team, he texted me and he was like, "This is the top for Sheeb." He's like, "I've had like 5 people walk in today looking for like Shiba coin." He's like, 100%, this is the top. And I think like 12 or 13 hours later, like death candle. And like, to be clear, we don't sell Shiba coin. We don't sell like altcoins at the machines or online. There's an interesting arrangement at the machines where we do sell a couple of the crypto casino coins, mostly to enable independence, which we can get into in a minute. But he was like, "Yep, this is it. This is the top. There's the signal." And sure enough, he was bang on. So you're right. I mean, with mass, you can see it now in our support tickets. Oh, are you guys going to enable XRP? Are you guys going to enable this and that? And it's like, no. We're Bitcoin only. We're self custody. This is the only way. But you're right. The market signals are quite interesting.
Right. Okay. So that's one thing I didn't actually fully understand, that you can just set up an online account with you as well. You don't have to go to the physical locations where the Bitcoin ATMs are.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So like the online portal is kind of our second business unit, our foray into making like a digital Bitcoin ATM, if you will. And like in America, where we just launched it, you like connect your bank, you go through the traditional ACH portal, and you just enter your receiving address, connect your bank. How much do you want to buy? $100. USD in, Bitcoin out to your wallet. Boom, instant done. The transaction, like again, the ACH payment takes like 3 days, something like that. But the second we get the money, the Bitcoin is gone and it's out. And then that same thing occurs in Canada. So the Bitcoin ATMs are one side. They're a completely separate business unit. And then the Bitcoin portal is our second business unit under the same corp.
Awesome. Right. Okay. Now, Lauren's just walked in. She was on an online class, so she couldn't ask you. You could no, exactly. I had to come down here and get going with. Right, here we go. With Adam here. So this is Adam. He runs a Bitcoin company. So yeah, what's your question?
Have you already asked what the company is?
Yeah, we've done all of them.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about Bitcoin?
Oh, good question. For sure, it's the ability to be like freedom. It's the opportunity to truly own, like create value in however you're going to create value. If you're an artist, if you're a bricklayer, if you are creating some kind of technology, however you create value for the world, you cut hair, whatever, you can then take that value and store it yourself and bring it into the future for future generations. And I think like we haven't had that opportunity really. Like have we ever had that opportunity? I mean, I want to say like back in like the Bible times, maybe that opportunity existed for the select few people that actually, got to have money. But it's funny. Do you guys have the trailers for the Napoleon movie coming out?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay, there's a Napoleon movie. Joaquin Phoenix is playing Napoleon. And like you think about like was that stage in the 1800s. I think Napoleon was one of the first like creating inflation. He was stamping coins, taking the outer ring and then melting down that gold and making inflation. So like even back now 3 centuries, we had governments and bureaucrats and centralized the state stealing value from the people. And Bitcoin gives us the opportunity to be free and to maintain the value that we create with our time, which is awesome.
Oh, it goes back way, way longer than that. Yeah. It goes
Yeah,
back.
that seemed wrong when I said it, but I wasn't sure.
No, but it's interesting. There's a great book out there called Fraud Coin by Rune Ostergaard. He's a Norwegian guy, and he wrote, and it's called Fraud Coin: 1,000 Years of Inflation as a Policy. Wow. And it's just really so interesting when you get into all of those historical stories that he's telling about how they did it, and he takes it all the way back to even the Viking times. Then I wrote a piece just recently on the Consensus Network blog about King Henry VIII and his great debasement scheme. Yes, which we taught about King Henry VIII at the state education system, like we were talking
go
about
figure.
But we didn't know that story unless you actually go out and look for it. And in fact, it was after King Henry VIII, he passed away, but the great debasement scam carried on. It wasn't until Queen Elizabeth I that was advised and managed to put a stop to it. And she was advised by Thomas Gresham. And this is where we get supposedly Gresham's law from, because he realized that the good coinage, the finer coins, were either being hoarded or were leaving the shores because the tradesmen from abroad would only accept like sound good money, coins. Good money.
Yeah, go figure.
Here we are, right? Like you said as well, when you start learning about Bitcoin, you start learning about all kinds. So I didn't even know about Napoleon pulling this one, but yeah, there's another one, another example.
It's crazy, 100%. It's interesting. Have you guys watched the Tuttle Twins? Have you heard of them?
Tuttle Twins. Yep, we watched that on YouTube.
I watched it a bit.
They have a good Bitcoin episode. It's really, really positive. I highly recommend it. My kids love it. You look like you might be a bit old for it, but it's really, really good.
No, I watched it. It's really good. But
did you?
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about Bitcoin?
Getting to listen to Daddy talk about it all the time.
Probably the people. I find the people, since they know what the truth is, they know how to. Since they know what the truth is, they act truthfully, and being truthfully is like being fun, and making jokes and stuff like that.
It's nice to be around people who know who they are, right? And that's what Bitcoin allows you to be. So you go to these conferences, and you're around people that aren't pretending to be anything else other than who they are meant to be, because Bitcoin has given them
or unless they're poop coiners or whatever you call them.
Yeah. You don't want to go to a poopy coin conference. That'd be
No,
awful.
those poopy coins. Yeah, no, those are bad. Are you guys going? There's a freedom conference in Costa Rica in January. I'm thinking I kind of want. I think we're gonna bring a couple kids. My wife and I might go down with a couple of our kids. I think having kids there is so. This next generation, I'm just like I'm just so. It's probably like the season of life, but I'm so amped up on like this next generation growing up. Like you are the future, Lauren. That's so exciting, and I'm so bullish on Bitcoiners having children and growing them up in houses that, like you said, like the people are what make it. And if each Bitcoiner has, a couple kids, and then a couple kids grow up, that's like 2 or 3 times. Like think about the exponential growth of the good people that we have in Bitcoin. It's so exciting.
100% it is. All right. Well, thanks for your questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you later. Bye.
So the last thing I think we need to cover on the Bitcoin well and what you're doing over there is, and we touched on it briefly about what happened in the UK. What's to stop this happening in Canada? Like this regulatory overreach, these useful idiots that are creating policies for your safety in the positions of power. Have you had any battles yet? Do you see any coming? How are you set up to kind of ward them off?
Yeah, we haven't necessarily had any major battles yet. It has been, though, been very like Canada experienced over the last 3 years quite an interesting display of rights withdrawn. We had a massive like convoy go across the country, big semi trucks. We then have people donating to that very important cause, and then we had money and bank accounts frozen. People were reporting that Bitcoin was frozen. It actually wasn't. The Bitcoin that was frozen went to a custodian, go figure. But the Bitcoin that was sent peer-to-peer was totally fine, which I thought was brilliant. Freedom Money employing a freedom convoy. But I think the way that our country has gone, withdrawing those rights and freedoms, it's on the wall. Like it's coming. And that's why, I think the self-custody of money is just so crucial, because we need people to be familiar with owning and controlling their money before that happens, right? We don't talk about the evacuation plan while the building's on fire. Like, I was at like a football game this weekend. There's like 70,000 people, and like 4 times they went over the evacuation plan. Like imagine if the arena catches fire and then they started telling us about the evacuation plan. Like that wouldn't be very good. And so the next few years are going to be crucial. It's like I said, it's not going to be a regulation on Bitcoin proper. It won't even probably be a regulation on us. It'll be Operation Choke Point 2.0, 3.0. That's the weirdest thing. I don't know why Apple does that. It's a new thing. Just side note, watch this. This is the craziest one that I've seen. I don't know how. I don't know how to turn it off. It's just a weird thing that happens. Anyways, it's going to be Operation Choke Point, like, whatever number it's going to be at the time. It's going to be banking. Like I personally am already banned from most banks in Canada. I cannot hold a personal checking account. My wife, just Bitcoin stuff, man. Like it's definitely coming. And we've got known instances. I was setting up the other day, a friend of mine, she owns a franchise company. They're companies from the US, but she franchises a local distribution center here. And she's signing up. She's not getting our emails. I'm like, what's going on here? Our email service is working. We've got people signing up. What's happening? Her franchisor shut down any email going to or from the word Bitcoin anywhere in the domain. Does not go through, blocked at the protocol level. And so we're going to see that with communication. We're going to see that with banking. And we, as a company need to find innovative ways to make it easy for people to continue to transact, make it easy for people to continue to stack Bitcoin, make it, almost inconspicuous. One of the ways that we've done our recurring buy system. So the way that you do recurring buy and the way that we have to do it in the US right now is you connect your bank, you then have an automatic withdraw weekly or daily or whatever it might be, and then send Bitcoin out. The way we do it in Canada is we do it through the bill payment network. And so you can set up a recurring bill payment from your bank, have it go automatically to our payment processor. The payment processor sends it to us, and then we send the Bitcoin. So there's kind of a level in the middle. The payment processor takes some risk because they're working with a Bitcoin company, which may or may not be allowed in the future. But your bank is at least insulated from knowing that you're buying Bitcoin. And I think more creative ways to keep it private, I suppose, and make it so that your bank doesn't necessarily know where your funds are going. The nanny state is coming, and Bitcoin Well is on a mission to enable independence. And part of the way we're going to have to do that is make it easy to accept Bitcoin, easy to buy Bitcoin, easy to sell Bitcoin without the nanny state necessarily interfering.
Do you think there is any hope? Is it just lack of education at the policymaking level? Or is there something else driving this kind of push?
It's hard to say, man. I mean, the question is so much deeper than Bitcoin. Like, was it lack of education that drove some of the COVID regulations? Or was it, a deeper conspiracy behind it? If I think about what Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin represents, it's the separation of money and state. And the state put up a hell of a fight when the church tried to split, or maybe vice versa. I feel like it used to be God giving power, which is why the state wanted to have God. And then today, it's not. Today, it's money giving power. Today, if you have money, like, people care a lot more about people with wealth than people of religious power. And I feel like the state would put up a pretty significant fight to have the power stripped away from them. That is the money machine, the unlimited money spigot that they currently have. And so we've got this tool that literally makes money democratic, literally removes the state from money, and the state is pushing back. Is that because is that because they're not educated, or are they too educated and too self-interested to let it happen? And it's hard to say. I mean, you can only claim ignorance for so long. It's 15 years Bitcoin's been around. Like, we've been talking about Bitcoin. Like, I personally have had, conversations with like politicians and policymakers for like, I think 2015, I had the first call. Like, it's been a long time. I think the argument for miseducation or uneducation, it's kind of gone now. It certainly feels targeted, and it certainly feels like it's part of a bigger plan.
Yeah, the reason I'm my mind's all over the place on this is because I had, before I was like, fuck those guys, fuck the state, they overreached, they overplayed, they're never going to get it, it's not for them, this is grassroots, we got this, we are Bitcoiners, and that's all good, and I still believe we do. And then just a few episodes ago, I had two ladies on here from the Open Dialogue Foundation, both political refugees, both been cut off by their countries, both had been targeted by kidnap attempts to get them back to their face charges in there, and one from Ukraine and one from Kazakhstan. One of them, in fact, had her brother kidnapped outside of a shopping mall in front of his wife and kids and tortured for 2 months, and not pleasant stuff.
Wow.
And this wasn't to do anything with Bitcoin. This was just to do with some other kind of political discourse that had been going on in one of these countries. And like, she was a lawyer and helping other political activists in different parts of the world. And what they were using was Bitcoin to help fund the families of those that, have lost an income due to their partner being kidnapped or whatever else, right? So real hard hitting heavy stuff. Now they are the ones that are going into Brussels, into the European Parliament to try and educate the policymakers who are there trying to ban proof of work mining in the EU right now. I'm like, wow, man, that's crazy. That's another angle. So you guys are doing that, and Bitcoiners are just yelling and shouting, like, end the Fed.
I know it feels, and let me be super clear. I take great issue with this like toxic mindset. I don't think. I mean, like I'm actually working on this like this theory or presentation or whatever you want to call it, that like Bitcoin is quite biblical, and the way that we interact with Bitcoin is very similar to how we interact with God. And Bitcoin in and of itself is like, in my opinion, indirectly talked about frequently throughout the Bible. And I think that if we were to remove Bitcoin and add like religion in the middle, shouting and screaming from a soapbox are some of the worst religious people in the world. In fact, I don't think they are doing, the Lord's work in any way, shape, or form. And so if we've got a bunch of, the toxicity that can roam around our maxi environment sometimes, I take issue with that. I don't think that we're going to. I just personally don't think there's hope in the state. I don't know. Like, I think it's absolutely admirable what those women are doing. I think that story. I think Ben from the BTC sessions. Of course you do, from the OPA. He was telling me about a conference he was speaking at, and that story. The husband was then released because there was donations coming for his legal costs, and his wife spoke at him, and we teared up when he was telling me the story. Like, his wife spoke at the conference, and then the next year he spoke at the conference, and it was because of Bitcoin that he was able to be like funded and released from prison. And I think that's absolutely remarkable. I don't know if there's enough incentive for the state and politicians to want to be educated, I guess. Did you ever watch the movie Concussion?
The way I've come to think about it is, I believe in the grassroots level of policymaking that the people there are still early enough into their career path that they want to make a change, and they're not completely churned up by the system yet. So maybe it's the grassroots politicians that we need to get, and the younger people going in. But then it's such a grind, man. Like, you're going up against that system that is
well, and the question becomes, do we need policy on Bitcoin, or do we just need less policy?
None.
Do we need
exactly?
I'm do we need
policy?
Do we need red tape in our direction, or do we just need less red tape? And we need someone that wants to come in and employ like a limited government mindset. We need free market. We need people that believe in what the free market can do, not necessarily, and hopefully the politicians will come to that. But is there incentive? Like, I make the joke, and even my kids make the joke that, like, if I was ever in office, the first thing I do is just get rid of the government.
Yeah, exactly.
My first order of
make
business
your job obsolete, right?
So make my job obsolete. Exactly. I would be like the worst politician in the world, because I would just be working to get rid of myself. Yeah. And I think that, I don't know that holds true for the majority of politicians or those charged with that duty.
Yeah,
but
I shudder at the
David's
thought.
A pessimist.
I shudder at the thought of chatting to them, but I told the ladies that look, Yeah, I'd come and speak to the policymakers if you need anybody to back you up. But hopefully, we're going to get a lot of people from mining companies that can go and do that. And I know in Canada, a lot of the Bitcoiners have had chats in the Houses of Commons. I think that's what you call it over there as well, or at the Parliament level. Jeff Booth for sure has gone in and spoken with, and you have Polyev, who seems to understand Bitcoin. So maybe there's hope.
He's interesting. Dave and I actually we sat down with Polyev in like 2020, 2021, right before he went on his big Bitcoin tear. And we talked to him about Bitcoin for like 3 hours. Like it was like, it was interesting. Someone who didn't really understand what Bitcoin was, but who understood what sound money is and why it was needed, to watch him go through, like we talked about earlier, that the greased monkey tube, right? It was like, oh, sound money. Yeah, I understand that. Oh, Bitcoin responds like this. Bitcoin responds like this. And it was like click, 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 boom, Bitcoiner. It was super cool to watch. But then again, we watch how politicians get squeezed. He goes on a Bitcoin tear. The opposition attacks because the high time preference, mindset of the media, like, the price gets crushed. He then transitions into a crypto and blockchain tear. Boom, diminished, right? It's like we see how political pressure can infect even those with hardened mindsets that are incentivized and really forced to play the game.
Yeah, it's terrible to see. All right, well, I think we've done everything justice here, except asking you the final question, and that is, if you had one last orange pill to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
One last orange pill. Oh man. I mean, like that I haven't already orange pilled, or like just like generally speaking?
You got one orange pill left, man. That's it. You got to give it to, and that contains your whole knowledge of Bitcoin and what it means, going forward, and what everything we've talked about today.
It's got to be put in a box to be released when my kids are like, or one of them, maybe the oldest, is like responsible enough to accept it, so that he can continue on the work. I think like that's really my job right now, is like my job is to build a platform that enables independence, and my job is to build as many kids as possible that can continue the mission after I can't. And so it's got to be sent it to the kids, man. It's got to go to the kids. Sound like Greg Foss up here, but it's like it's just the kids, man. It's the next generation of Bitcoiners. It's Lauren. It's like it's understanding how crucial this next generation is. What their experience, they're going to be, hopefully not many of them, but they will be the ones going into the state. They'll be the ones making the next generation of Bitcoiners. They'll be, we're going to be the old guys yelling at clouds here soon. Yeah. We need to empower the next gen. And so it's like I said, my oldest is 7. It's like, it's probably going in a box. And when he's like, I don't know, what's the age, 12, 15, that kind of age, like Mario style, it opens up. He's got the mushroom, and he takes it from there. Is probably the time capsule era.
Love it, mate. Right. Okay. How can people reach you if they want to find out a little bit more and look into Bitcoin? Well,
yeah, hit me up on Twitter at Adam O'Brien _. But like, if you're in North America, go to bitcoinwell.com/join, read about the company. I love feedback. Make an account. Tell me how it gets better. Let's chat. Let's just link up. Yeah, I love speaking about Bitcoin and freedom. And so let's just chat. Hit me up on Twitter.
All right, man. Well, Adam, thanks for building on Bitcoin. Thanks for, sharing everything that you've shared today. And I hope we get to meet in person at some point over the next couple of years at one of these conferences. And yeah, great to have you on, man. Thank you.
Amazing, Daniel. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.